seated. Well, good afternoon, everybody, for this special occasion. Distinguished visitors and guests, members of Council, may I welcome you all here today to this extraordinary meeting of Council. The first item is to receive apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received in advance of the meeting from Councillors Byford, Carrington, Haynes, Kitching, Owen and Sharp. Are there any further apologies?
Councillor Ryan and Councillor Johnson.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
We are here today, colleagues, to consider the passing of a resolution in accordance with section 249, part 5 of the Local Government Act of 1972 to admit Lord St Oswald to be an honorary freeman of the city. In accordance with the Council's rules of procedure, I have given my consent to permit speeches in excess of 5 minutes by the leader and the deputy leader of the Council and the leader of the Conservative Group, and have waived standing orders to permit Sir Rodney Walker and Lord St Oswald to address Council. I'm therefore pleased to call upon the leader of the Council, Councillor Denise Jeffrey, to formally move the resolution. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm so pleased and honoured to propose the group of the city of our district. You've embraced our district and worked alongside us for so many years. You've supported our district and its residents, working with each mayor as the years have gone by. You've supported civic societies, community groups and our veterans. You've attended all our events across communities, and you're embedded in our communities. Can I say, one of our team? You give so much of your time to our district, and it is noticed and appreciated by us and the people of our district. You've supported many charities, especially the hospice, and your adventures on mountain climbing and trekking across the desert are truly inspirational, and helped the hospice, and I know that Helen is truly grateful for all your efforts. We've worked together for a long time, and I just want to mention a couple of things that we did. We both worked together on funding for the Heftwoods, and you were in charge of fundraising. And I asked you if I could have you as an auction prize, and you said, what will I do? And I said, I'd like you to give out an team at Knoxville. And I took it to an auction. Actually, it raised £600, so you weren't a cheap girl. And some Japanese visitors actually paid £600 to come and have tea at Knoxville, and we did. But they were so excited that they were going to have tea with a real live lawn. And they were really, really thrilled by it. And then the other thing recently that you've been involved with was perhaps some of my madcap ideas. And you've helped us with a business model that we may use at Woolly Hall, based in a small way on the success that you've had at Knoxville Business Park, which is tremendous. And if we can do something like that at Knoxville, at Woolly, it would be truly inspirational. So I just want to say I'm so proud to call you my friend and to nominate you today. I have to move an official resolution now. I move that in pursuant to section 2495 of the Local Government Act 1972, that Lord St Oswald be admitted to be honorary freeman of the city in recognition and acknowledgement of his outstanding services to the city, veterans, businesses and charity, and as ambassador of Wakefield Metropolitan District Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. The Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Hemingway, will second the resolution. Thank you, Councillor Hemingway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to second the nomination of Charles Wynne and Lord St Oswald for the freedom of the city of Wakefield. I've known Charles for a few years now, through our respective roles, and he's always struck me as an individual that shows passion, enthusiasm and commitment for our district, its people and many of its good causes. He's courteous, kind, hard-working and always there to support the people. Legion, continuing a great legacy started by his uncle as well in the 1950s, or fundraising for Wakefield Hospice, as Denise, the leader, has already said, to which his family have lent their name and supported since the very first sod was cut back in the 1980s. Charles has always shown great commitment to charitable causes close to the heart of people in Wakefield District. He's also been a regular face of Wakefield's civic life too, supporting the various charities over the years, regularly attending many of the key events in the civic calendar and doing his best to champion Wakefield. But it's further than that as well. He supports the cathedral, local business forums, so much unseen work that goes behind the man that is Charles Swanson as well. Really important contribution to Wakefield made over the years, Charles, so thank you very much indeed. And I think it's only fitting that this lifetime of charitable and civic contribution that's been made without asking for anything in return is formally recognised by this council and the people of Wakefield. And that's why I'm pleased to second this very worthy nomination for someone who's given so much to our district. Today, and henceforth, let us recognise his efforts as a freeman of the city of Wakefield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemingway. I'd now like to invite the leader of the Conservative Group, Councillor Tony Homewood, to address the Council. Councillor Homewood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Conservative Group wholeheartedly endorsed the resolution here today that Lord St Oswald be conferred the honour of the honorary freedom of the city of Wakefield. As a tireless and resolute champion of this district, its businesses, charities and veterans amongst others, it's a most befitting honour and one that's so rarely awarded, which makes it much more special for him today. We all know the long-standing commitment he gives to a wide array of local charities throughout our district and the incredible warmth of affection which he's held by all of them. For this council to be able to both recognise and acknowledge his dedication, loyalty and service to the Wakefield district is an incredible feather in our cap. We're also much richer for having Lord St Oswald stand with us as a towering ambassador and ceaseless advocate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Homewood. I'd now like to invite Sir Rodney Walker to address the Council.
Mr Mayor, Lord Lieutenants, guests of honour and distinction, ladies and gentlemen. My association with Nostell Priory began in 1981 with Charles's uncle, Roland. At the time, I was chair of the Wakefield Festival and learned that the stable block at Nostell was being converted into an events venue. So, as a young man, brash, I turned up and asked to meet whoever was in charge and was introduced to the then Lord St Oswald. And to my amazement, he welcomed me with great warmth, and that was the beginning of my relationship with him and indeed with the family. In 1984, Roland died and the title passed to Charles's father. And I found myself an executor and a trustee of Roland's estate. In 1999, the title passed to Charles, and so for 23 years, he and I have worked together closely in connection with the family's land and property in Lincolnshire. In 1985, Charles married the delightful Louise, who I'm pleased to say is with us here today. They now have two grown-up children, Roland, or Rowley, as he is known, and Henrietta. I knew in advance that the council leader wished to pay tribute to his contribution to the Wakefield district, and so I won't repeat many of the contributions that Charles has made in that regard. What I am aware of course, over the 23 years that I've worked with him, is how his vision for Nostell and the development that he has implemented there has led to the conversion to a very high standard, I might say, of a number of what were run-down buildings into 47 offices employing some 250 people. Add to this, he is a delightful man and a pleasure to work with. So I feel extremely privileged today to have been asked, on the occasion that he received the freedom of the city, to come and support the honour which he so richly deserves. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Rodney. Members of Council, we shall now vote on the resolution proposed by our leader. All in favour? Any against?
Touch and go, Charles.
I can say in great comfort and relief that is carried. I now ask the Chief Executive to read out the scroll of admission being the certificate of the granting of the honour Greek freedom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my great privilege to read the formal declaration. At an extraordinary meeting of the Council of the City of Wakefield Metropolitan District held in the County Hall, Wakefield, on the 29th day of June 2022, the Right Worshipful the Mayor David Jones in the chair, it was moved by Councillor Denise Jeffrey, seconded by Councillor Jack Hemingway, and it was resolved that pursuant to section 249 of the Local Government Act of 1972, that the Lord St Oswald be admitted to be an honorary freeman of the city in recognition and acknowledgement of his outstanding services to the city, veterans, business and charity, and as an ambassador for the Wakefield district. And this is formally certified that on the 29th day of June 2022, the Lord St Oswald was admitted to the role of honorary freeman of the city.
Now, may I invite Lord St Oswald to sign the roll of honorary freeman. I now invite the Leader of Council, Councillor Denise Jeffrey, to present the roll of honour to Lord St Oswald. Right, I now invite Lord St Oswald, Honorary Freeman of the City, to address the Council.
Lord Lieutenant, Mr Mayor, Sir Rodney Walker, Dean Simon Cowan, Council members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and what a wonderful afternoon it is. Thank you, Rodney. Now, before I respond to your very kind words, I just want to take a moment to repeat what I said at lunch earlier this afternoon. That is, it still feels so surreal knowing that I'm about to be given the freedom of the city. A great honour, and one I never thought to receive until Denise rendered me speechless on what I thought would just be a normal Thursday morning in February, when she telephoned to say that she nominated me for this award, and the proposal had been unanimously agreed. So my sincere gratitude to all members of Wakefield Metropolitan District Council and everyone here today who've been involved in granting this ancient and distinguished award. Rodney, you and I and my family go back a long way, and I'm sincerely touched by all you've said. I'm sure that for you too, today brings back many happy memories, as you were given this very same award in 2012, an accolade you so richly deserve. As we all know, Wakefield is always home to you. Its advancement as a city is close to your heart, and we know how much you've done and how so many have benefited from your ability to often make the impossible. Wakefield was, of course, also home to my late uncle, who was most fortunate, and it was most fortunate for the future of Worcester and the estate that you and he came together at a time when both were in much need of updating. It was in the early 1980s we sought your advice of how this should be done, and it was the success of your indispensable guiding hand that helped fulfill his vision for Munster, the estate, and the farmland at Appleby near Scunthorpe in Lincolnshire. Following my uncle's death in 1984, Appleby became a trust. It is once again due to your expertise that it has so successfully moved forward. The upgrading of Nostell at the estate in time led the way to my vision of turning the then derelict farm park into a business park. I'm extremely grateful to you because you helped lay the foundations that led to this flourishing enterprise, of which I'm immensely proud. It all started for me when my family and I came to live at Nostell in 1972, when I was a young teenager. Knowing this was where my future lay, I quickly became immersed into absorbing everything I could about the estate, working on the land, and learning to grasp the very heart of it, its characteristics and qualities. Through the years, my deep attachment for it and the surrounding areas has steadily grown and continues to grow. Over the past 360 years, my family have been involved with communities in and around Wakefield, seeking always to benefit them and the city. I have to say that it's with great pride that I've been able to follow in their footsteps, and more latterly those of my uncle and father, stepping into their shoes to support the charities they helped to establish. representatives of which are here with us today. And the distance between North Yorkshire, where I now live, and this city feels like no distance at all. It's a journey I always do with pleasure. I just point the car in the direction of Wakefield, Northstall, or wherever I'm going in the district, and it knows exactly where it's going. My purpose always is to be involved in furthering every advantage possible for its community and increasing the prosperity of a city very dear to my heart. So my thanks again to everyone for granting me this very special privilege. You have my assurance I will not disappoint you. And my last words are to thank my wife, Louise. Could not do any of this without her support. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Right, thank you, distinguished visitors and guests, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this extraordinary meeting of the Council. Members are invited to take refreshments in Committee Room A, and the ordinary meeting of the Council will commence in 20 minutes, which means it will be at 2:45. Thank you all very much.
declare an interest in motion with regards to carers as I'm chair of carers Wakefield district.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Thank you. Agenda item 2 is to receive and confirm the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 19th of May 2022. Are these minutes moved?
Mr Mayor.
Minutes seconded?
Second, Mr. Smith.
All in favour? And that is carried. Agenda item 3 is to receive apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received in advance of meetings from councillors Byford, Carrington, Haynes, Kitching, Owen and Sharp, Ahmed, Gordon and Johnson. Are there any further apologies? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is to deal with such announcements as I may decide to lay before Council. Friends and colleagues, my first mayoral month has been filled with Jubilee celebrations, civic parades and services around the region, along with fairs, galas and award evenings. The Mayoress and I have met many uplifting and talented people in our district, and we received warm welcomes wherever we have travelled. I was especially honoured to be able to line the Queen's Platinum Jubilee beacon on behalf of the Wakefield district at Pontefract Castle, and I thank you to everyone who supported us at our civic parade on the 4th of June. We have spent time in the company of regional mayors who have been in tower support. We were especially pleased to be invited to take on as possible. Last week we attended the West Yorkshire Policing Awards, and I was especially proud when the Mayoress won the Special Recognition Award for her dedication and commitment to the Junior Cadets programme. May I take this opportunity to thank everyone who has donated to my children's charities, which are the Dr. Jackson Research Fund and Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, two tremendous charities which do vital work for the people of our district. Any donations or support for these charities during the year will be greatly appreciated. I think I'd also like to add on Monday night, Councillor Isherwood and Councillor Dagger, along with Olivia Rowley, attended a fantastic concert at Wakefield Cathedral that was presented by the music service, and I can honestly say it was an absolutely amazing evening, and is a real testament to the talent of young people that we have in our district and the quality of the music service, which really produced for us, I'm sure my colleagues will agree, a faultless performance, but I use the musical term, a tight performance. It was a really good evening, particularly when one of the members of the Wakefield Youth Orchestra, Thomas Poppett, actually had a premiere of his first music called The Vault, which was a fantastic thing to actually to perform something that had been written by one of the members of the orchestra. Now I'm proposing this in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 16.4 during the consideration of the Children and Young People's Plan at Agenda Item 9 that the Council hears from some of the young people who helped shape the plan. Is that agreed?
Mr Mayor, that would require, if necessary, depending on the time children arrive from school, an adjustment to the order of business, which can be agreed if council somebody moves and seconds that and everybody is in agreement.
Yeah, moved. Thank you. Seconded. All in agreement? Thank you very much. Finally, colleagues, I was saddened to hear the passing of the two former councillors, Rick Hayworth and Yvonne Crew. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families and loved ones, and I would like to take a minute, please, in reflection of their great contributions to our council. Thank you. report. Once the leader has presented her report, she will answer any questions from members on the matters raised in her report. A maximum of 30 minutes will be allowed for her report, followed by 30 minutes for questions and answers. Councillor Jeffrey.
Don't worry everybody, I'm not going to take 30 minutes off, hopefully not 30 minutes question. First of all, we haven't had a council meeting since the local elections, and we have a number of new elected members in the room today, and I just would like them to stand up so that people could see who they are and congratulate them in their election. Thanks very much everybody and welcome, and I hope that we can have welcome as well to yourself, and I hope that we can all have a healthy debate without too much falling out across the floor. I did a question session yesterday. We have a leader question time each month where the public can ask us questions, and I did it alongside my colleague, Councillor Cummings. And the first question was that people felt that we put too many posters up during elections and that they're not good for the environment, and they wanted to know how soon we were all going to take them down. I think at some point it's going to be an issue for us all, political parties, about whether we have any posters at all, because I think the public feel that, you know, that there are too many of them, and we don't take them down quick enough. And it's all parties. I'm not criticising any particular party, it's just that we all leave them up far too long, and I think it is becoming an issue with the public, and perhaps we could have a debate on that at some time. The other thing I'd like to inform you about is that I was invited by the Ireland team to the Unite Union to go and speak to the picket line at Castleford in my own ward, which I did. And what they asked if I could raise with Tracy Braden, the elected mayor, was that the government was still paying a subsidy to Arriva for not providing the service. I have raised that with Tracy Braden, and what the answer is that it's very difficult to stop the subsidy like that. But what we have done at the Combined Authority is stop the subsidies that come out of the Combined Authority to the bus companies at the moment. So that was something that I was asked to raise, and I have raised that. I don't think I've got a lot else. I think you've probably heard enough from me today. So I'll leave it there and answer any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any questions on Councillor Jeffrey's report? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to posters in wards in these recent elections, I'd like it put on record that each ward pays thanks to the people who put the posters up in each ward and what a magnificent job they did on behalf of their party. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Abbey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Jeffrey, I understand you have tried your best to save some money from subsidy for Arriva, but this strike is indefinite, and people have already suffered for 4 weeks and above, and especially in the area of rural places. They can't go to work, they can't go to appointments. So I just wonder whether the council can lobby the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to put some measures in, and it has to be as soon as, otherwise it's going to be too late, and summer's coming as well. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, Sam, I didn't quite catch what you were asking.
So my question is, what this council is going to be able to do to help the people in the rural area, because the bus service is non-existent, franchising is not coming, but we as a council has an obligation or duty to help those people stranded by this strike, and this indefinite strike, we don't know the end of it. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously it's a difficult situation when people withdraw their labour, workforce withdraw their labour. It's very difficult for and we don't want to be accused of strike breaking by putting extra buses, etc. on, if that's what you were suggesting. But we will try and mitigate the situation, and we are speaking with Tracy Graven and Arriva to try and bring things to a close.
Councillor, do you want to?
Yes, please. Councillor Jeffries, just in regards to the posters, I do agree with your comments, as long as it's an even playing field. As one of the candidates that are running the recent by-election, I'd just like to put on record really, you would have seen a hell of a lot of my posters up. By Sunday evening, all banners were removed. 90% of the correct boards have been removed. We're just looking for the last few. They should be done by Friday.
Councillor Farmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just endorsing what Councillor Kessler said there. I don't mind putting them up, but I don't think I'd have to take them down because always being taken by somebody else. So I support what you're saying there, definitely. Thank you.
Councillor.
As somebody who's put most of the Conservative ones up in general elections for the last, God knows how many general elections, pretty much myself and Councillor Hunt, I think people need to understand that the evidence is that those posters don't work. It's only because one person puts them on that everyone else does it. What we ought to do is ban doing it, stop doing it. It doesn't work anyway. It saves us all a load of money and spend it on someone else, because they're not cheap, are they?
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 7, cabinet members' reports. Cabinet members have up to 5 minutes to present their reports, and there are a further 15 minutes allocated to enable each cabinet member to respond to any questions or brief comments on matters within their portfolio area. The first report is from Councillor Hemingway, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Climate Change and Environment. Would you please introduce your report, Councillor Hemingway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I also join the leadership of all new members to the chair that both have on the successful career representing our constituents in this chamber. Not much to particularly add to my report as written, just to say a huge thank you to all the council staff involved in combating forest fire off Hartwood this weekend. It was a forest fire that would be quite dangerous in the current dry conditions, but council countryside officers, emergency planning and across the fire service and police all responded very quickly to deal with that fire promptly and effectively, which undoubtedly saved large areas of London. So I just want to put my thanks to those involved in that response. Gives great confidence for the future. With that, I'll do my report.
Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Hemingway's report? Okay, thank you, Councillor Hemingway. The next report is the Portfolio Holder for Children and Young People. Councillor Ishwood, would you please introduce your report to the Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur the concert on Saturday night, Friday night, Monday night, was absolutely magnificent. I've been to them before, and to see all these young people performing in the way they did was absolutely wonderful. So yes, I concur with that. And going on to that, I'd like to mention the Imagination Library graduation event, which was for the really little children. It was wonderful to attend with my deputy, Councillor Scott. It's great to see the benefit these children and families. It's not just the children that benefit, it is the families as well. I'd like to say thank you to the staff and teams in our children's zones who successfully judged. It's good, it's fabulous that they do so much good work. And although it's not mentioned in my report, I would also like to thank the staff and teams for the wonderful achievement of receiving highly recommended award at the recent NGA Awards for Workforce Transformation. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I move my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Thank you, Councillor Ishwood. Next, the Portfolio Holder for Community, Poverty and Health. Councillor Cummings, could you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In moving the report, I hope you find some interesting items in there. I've tried to be a little bit varied this time. But what I do want to do, and it's not in the report, is just to update members on the currently running More Money in Your Pocket campaign. We've already been to 11 venues across the district. The next one is in Criggleston on Saturday. I hope to see you there. We have already had 337 people through 11 venues. We have managed up to now to help people with over £100,000 worth of unclaimed benefit that they can claim. Not just welfare benefit, but benefits around energy and other things. So the campaign is actually working very well. With 5 more venues to do, one in Criggleston, one in Pontefract, one in Upton, one in Horbury, and the last one is... Well, the last one, sorry, is in Hall. Sorry, I'm losing my voice now, which I'm sure you're all pleased about. So with that, I do move the report, but one plea, my hearing aid's just packed in, so if you're going to ask me a question, please shout up so I can hear you. Thank you, with that, I move the report.
Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Spade.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you, Maureen, for the closure orders that are working on Castle Town Centre. The ASB in that area is causing a great deal of stress for local residents, so I was really good to welcome any action the council can take to raise it. Thank you.
Councillor Shield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just comment, Maureen, I know you mentioned the cover tables. I think that's really wonderful. We have one in Wakefield Library, and I would recommend that people do look at them. But yeah, brilliant.
Are there any further questions or comments? Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Moving on to portfolio hold for culture, leisure and sport. Councillor Gray, would you please introduce your report to the council?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd just like to thank all the staff right across our libraries throughout the district for the fantastic Wakefest Festival. We've had so many different activities going on in the libraries, hundreds and hundreds of visitors, and it's been an absolute smashing success. Obviously, the last one was in October, and we moved it earlier in the calendar this year so we can fit everything else in, but it gives a massive success. And we will be looking at how we can advertise all of those activities, because there's so many of them. It's not as simple as putting it on a one web page, but we're looking at as many ways as possible, getting that information out to people. And secondly, just to say, we brought, as everyone will know, pedlos and rowboats back to Pugneys, which has been a smash hit. Everyone's loving those in the hot sun. Absolutely fantastic. We did also bring back parking as well, and I've had a lot of people getting in contact with me about the parking charges, about the pedlos, and it's just to sort of reassure people that at the moment we can have those activities on top of the water. That's very safe, but about other activities, including using the lake for water sports, it's not quite ready to go back to that yet, but we are keeping all options open for the future, and every penny that we make through parking will be invested back into Pugneys to make it bigger and make it better for everyone to enjoy. So with that, Mr Mayor, I move the report and happy to take any questions.
Any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Graham? Councillor Wishy.
You can hardly mention the word culture without immediately thinking of Featherstone. Like, all the people that are laughing, I'd like to thank the leader for coming down to the official opening of the 6 statues that we opened on the Warhol site. So we've got the old shunting that's down there now. We've got the wonderful Warhols, which I think most people... Have I mentioned that before, by the way? No. No, I haven't mentioned it. So we've now got the wonderful Warhols. We've now got 6 statues representing the people who didn't actually go to battle, but stayed at home to basically keep the on-fire burning, as it were. We've got a refugee, which Featherstone was well known for welcoming refugees. Quite ironic now when we start talking about refugees, isn't it? how some don't want to, but in Featherstone welcomes them with open arms. So there's one for the nurse, the AD nurses, and there's one which I know Steve myself are particularly proud of, is the bamboo buses. And for people who didn't know what they were, there was a shadow band who used to take the bus load of ladies to Barnwell, where their job was stuffing the ammunition shells. And there was that much sulphur in them, they got the nickname, the Canary Girls. And even children were born with this sulphur dye in them, so they were born yellow, same as, same there was a child, who obviously had to do his dad's jobs, but his dad was growing up in Belgium. So there's that one, and there's also a wounded soldier laying a poppy down, laying on his crutch. So I would suggest that anybody who's remotely interested in the culture of the district goes to Featherstone. It is now a destination place. I have not been down, I go down regularly, but typically keep making sure it's good. I'd like to thank Street Scene as well, because they keep it nice and tidy for us. I thank planning, who made it possible, and actually, Lawson Doswell allowed us to use his lane, basically, to use the lane to offload the statues, and the artist is called Luke Perry. And if anybody checks him up, he's doing some fantastic work. He's one of the last remaining chain makers in the UK. And he's done a statue for the ladies who went on strike because they got paid for weight making chains. And they were only allowed to make them into small chains. The big chains were made by the chap. So we got that balanced up. And if you look at the front of it, there's an anchor chain from a destroyer submarine builder, and that's marking the entrance to the gate. So thank you for your kind words, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that free advert for coming to Featherstone anyway. But I would certainly say that it's worthwhile a visit. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With reference to the auditing of Wakefield Museum and Libraries stock, can we be assured that history is history, not the history of some people wish it were, and that we're not going to hide things away because we don't like them?
Thanks, Councillor Homewood. I think we have many pieces within our warehouse that we are extremely proud of, and the biggest problem's always been that we haven't got enough places to show them off, and so that's why we have these little displays in libraries across the district, as well as in our museums. I'm very proud of everything we've got in there, and I don't think there's anything that is controversial, and it's all getting rotated, and I'm very happy to show everything off. So yeah, I think the answer to that is yes.
Councillor Peter.
I'd just like to say, obviously the return of Aubrey Street Fair, and sorry to apologise, just like to say the return of Aubrey Street Fair and Aubrey Show that's taking place this month. Well received, well represented, and thank you to everybody who was involved, Rotary and all members within the community and village of Park. Thank you.
Yeah, I must admit that the Mayor's tonight it was a fantastic morning, very worth it. A lot of hard work and commitment from the people of Aubrey were very welcoming. Any bit? Sorry, Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, just to come back to Mayor, just to say, I think it's me who should be thanking everyone else for this. I think the council and officers do a lot of work with different groups, such as in Featherstone and Horbury, but I think Graham's statues and the Horbury show as well are put together by a huge team of volunteers, people who don't have to do this thing and who work many hours tirelessly, and it's for the assistance of Wakefield Council. So a massive thank you to you guys for putting these things on, because in my report this is just what we're doing, but there's tons of other stuff going on, so thank you for advertising it here as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Right, thank you, Councillor Mayor. Next report is portfolio
few things that I'd like to point out. It's good to see that key employment sites are being brought across the district, creating skilled jobs district-wide. The adult education, 600 new enrolments, hopefully this growth will continue. And it's great to see numbers are up with the Skill Up project. Let's hope that this trend actually continues. And with that, Mr Mayor, I move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Massman. Are there any questions or any comments? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this question is for Councillor Byford, but I suppose if you can't give me the answer now, it's okay. My question is about the travel site, the planning application or the potential application for the site to be built, as Travelers Park to be built on Peace Common. I know that just now when I asked the leader a question and she seemed to have a problem to understand me, instead of asking her to have a panel hearing aids, I blame my English teacher, because after all, I'm an English literature student so many years ago. So in my image, Peace Common is Charlotte Bronte, is Howard of Wakefield, it's a gem of our district. But this travel site has been planned and built for exactly on the side of the common land. The common land itself is about more than 200 square meters. So as a rural councillor, I wonder why we spoil our green belt, why we have spoiled our biodiversity, why we have to change the Trans-Pennine Trail to actually build a road in the middle of the Peace Common, of the common land. So I just wonder whether Councillor Byford can give us an update as where we are with this project. Thank you.
Councillor Massman.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. I've taken note of your question and your comments, and I'll get a written response for you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Massman. Next, portfolio held planning and highways. Councillor Hawley, would you please introduce your report? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, last Thursday I was proud and pleased to stand with members of the IT Union outside the station on the way to the Combined Authority meeting. This morning I was proud and pleased to stand in support of Unite the Union outside the bus depot, striking for better terms, conditions, pay and better services, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, it wasn't so long ago he was hailing these people as heroes, keeping the public transport running during the pandemic, and that they were frontline workers, and they deserve the respect and recognition for that, Mr Mayor, and that's why I support them today on the picket lines. But Mr Mayor, I think we need to get around the table with the arena. Again, I think we need to listen to more carefully about their conditions, about what they want, and just moving forward, Mr Mayor. With that, I'm glad to take any more questions and answers on my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hawley. Any questions?
Thank you, Councillor Morley. I share your view that we need to get them around the table. I've had the strain over the last 3 weeks of taking care of the vulnerable and disabled residents of my ward. This isn't a question, just a recommendation or a suggestion for you to possibly take back. As there's no buses, some people do have private vehicles which they don't use to come into the town centre and other areas to get to work, and if they do drive in, they've still got parking charges because there's obviously a 2-hour cap. Can I put forward a recommendation to this council to wipe the parking charges for an unlimited period until the bus strikes end, so there's no 2-hour cap? It's a recommendation from my part, and I'd be very grateful if you'd consider that.
Yeah, we have got the 360 bus still moving around the city centre. We've also got service going from the bus station, which is 360 bus coming up to Pingerfields as well. We've got the all-day car parking, which is extremely cheap on Barnsley Road at the Waterfront car park. So we're doing as much as we can with the free car parking as well to support as many local residents.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to thank Councillor Morley that some resident has come back to say that the new road marking near to Miller Dam is great. So they really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to say to Councillor Moore that has been great. One of our schools in Featherstone has been included in that, and it's made a big difference to residents on that street on a morning when children are going to school, because there's no cars can go up there, and it is quite safe. And I hope it will probably continue after the 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor King. We have been more fortunate in this district that we've had police fighting with these school streets. They have been a success all over the place. I know we're looking to expand and move this further forward with other locations across the district.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Morley knows, I've raised the issue with him. Lord knows everybody in this chamber must be absolutely fed up to the back teeth with traffic lights. I mean, you know, I drove the other day from Alderthorpe to the end of Broadway, 3 sets of traffic lights. And it's just insane. And now we all accept that some of these things have to happen, but I'm reliably informed by the man who controls the digs that Wakefield is the worst place to do a dig, because they insist on putting a little walkway around if he so much as breaks a fingernail on the pavement. There's a little walkway and a set of traffic lights up, and he assures me that this doesn't happen anywhere else. And I do know, obviously, that you've undertaken to come back to me on this, but I just wanted to get it on the record, because something really needs to be done about it. The damage it's done to some businesses is beyond a joke, frankly. I mean, it truly is. I mean, if you can't make it to Blackpool this year, turn up in Dale Street at Ossick, because we've got a variety of lights there that are guaranteed to be there at least sort of 5 days a week. And you get to sit there for a good while to look at them, so, you know.
Roadworks, one of life's necessary nuisance, unfortunately, Mr. Mayor. Nobody wants them, but if you didn't have them, and the companies, utility companies in the town that invested in infrastructure, the same deal country complain about roadworks, we complain about gas not being there, electric not being there, water not being there. I do take on board what you're saying, I don't know if that's true or not. So, neither do you. So, I might go back to office to see, do we work any differently from any other local authority on that? So, I'll come back to you on that.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify a point that Councillor Owen's given regarding traffic lights. Look, I may be a bit thick, but I can't understand why we put traffic lights up on the Friday and they don't start the work till the Monday, Tuesday. Could they just give me a reason for that? Why don't they just wait till the Monday? Because it's just May at the weekends.
I don't know, because I don't go to every single traffic light down in you on that one. I mean, what tends to happen in my experience with this, it's such as Yorkshire Water, which is gas and everything like that. They get in there, they sort the problem out, there's different teams come back to reinstate, like maybe, you know, after the weekend or something like that. So, what you're alluding to there, Councillor, is something I'm not aware of.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morley. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you. Right, the final cabinet member report is as to the portfolio holder for resources. Councillor Collins, can you please introduce your report to council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In introducing my report, I'm going to do something that I find incredibly difficult. I'm going to ask Ellie to stand up, who's up in the gallery. Ellie is offered a huge congratulations, and last week she won Lawyers in Local Government Junior Lawyer Award. Ellie is a solicitor and legal manager based in our childcare team. She's a fantastic example of Wakefield's Bromeo's own initiative, coming in through social care, working up and working through and getting the training, and then finally being awarded Junior Lawyer of the Year award. Ellie is highly regarded by her colleagues as a strong tactical lawyer with a broad and detailed knowledge of the legal field, and as a manager, she described as offering a voice of maturity and leadership within the team, training and mentoring others and supporting them. As a council, we are very proud, so I'd just like you all to join me in the applause. Thank you, I promise I won't embarrass you anymore. And then finally, moving my report, I'd just like to make council aware that in line with the increase in fuel costs, as a council we are looking at how we can support our workforce with this. Obviously it's something that the council is failing to step in and address, so we are looking at trying to increase that mileage allowance to enable our workforce to not lose out doing a fantastic job that they do for us. And that movement.
Well, I'll offer my congratulations as well. Well done. Thank you. Right, are there any questions or comments on the report? Okay, thank you very much. Right, agenda item 8 is to consider reports detailing an amendment to the Leaders' Cabinet arrangements and confirmation of the Armed Forces Champion. Is the report moved?
What's the report, Mayor?
Is the report seconded?
Second the report, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions in relation to the report?
Just a correction to it. I think it should be Councillor Steve Vickers as opposed to, you know, I do lots of things, but the Armed Forces Champion isn't on my agenda at the moment. I think it's just probably a printing error on page 68 of the agenda, which I think for anybody else that knows, except me and Councillor Mitchell, have we all read the agenda? Not much changing to Councillor Steve.
Just you to notice. We weren't going to say anything.
I read things. Take it.
Thank you for your constructive observation, Councillor Tully. All right, are there any questions then in relation to the report? Apart from Councillor Tully? Yes?
I'd just like to say that I thank Steve for taking this on, but I would like to pay tribute, and I know we're having an event on Monday. Sandra Pickett has done a fantastic job with the Armed Forces Champion. She's lived and breathed looking after the veterans. She's gone over and above, and I know, Steve, I'm sorry, but she will be a hard act to follow, so I'm sure you're up to it. But I just want to place on record all the hard work that she's done over the years.
Yeah, I fully concur with all the things I've done with activities with it. Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Congratulations. Right, this item may need to be moved down the agenda, which is going to be, we have to move that down to the end. So we're going to agenda item 10, which is to consider the Audit and Governance Committee annual report for 2021-2022. Is the report moved? Councillor Spade.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to present the annual report of the Audit and Governance Committee. Producing an annual report allows the committee to demonstrate to those charged with governance, i.e. the wider council membership, that we fulfil the requirements of our terms of reference, we've made an effective contribution to good governance with the successful delivery of our work programme, and in doing so we can provide assurance of the effectiveness of the council's internal control environment. In fact, the practice of taking an annual report to full council is reflected in the SIPA Good Practice Guidance. Members will hopefully see that the report demonstrates the breadth of work undertaken by the committee since June 21, with the report illustrating that the collaborative work of elected members, the independent persons, external audit and council officers has worked successfully in Wakefield. Alongside the breadth of the reports received, the annual report references the committee's role in driving forward the government's action plan. The report also references those priority risks where we have undertaken a deep dive during the reporting period alongside the assurance reports received. Appendix A, which can be found on pages 99 and 100, brings this together with a log of the committee's activity, which you'll hopefully find useful. Reflecting back on the previous year, we increased independent member representation on the committee. We received specific targeted training delivered by SIPA to enhance our understanding of the Council's financial reporting requirements. We played a key role in challenging how priority tasks were scored and managed, challenged presenting officers, examined the accounts, approved the annual governance statement, drove forward the improvement actions contained within the governance action plan, kept under review the performance of the internal audit team, approved the internal audit charter, received mid-year and out-term reports on the Council's treasury management activities, received mid-year and year-end county fraud arrangements reports, which include whistleblowing, and identified specific areas where assurance reporting was required. In summary, Mr Mayor, based on the breadth of work covered and the challenges we have provided, Council's risk management framework, the control environment, and the integrity of financial reporting and annual government processes. The committee has met for the first time earlier in the month, and we've agreed a robust work programme for the year ahead, which builds upon the work outlined in the annual report. And with that, Mr Mayor, I move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Freitas. Report seconded.
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Are there any questions in relation to the report? Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Agenda item 11 is to consider the OBE Scrutiny Annual Report 2021-2022. Is the report moved? Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, this report people is building the platform. I'm just saying my report is equal to thrilling is what yours is. Could I just say before I start, when I mentioned those statues, I mentioned them statues, not the name. There's also a miner, and he's carrying his banner, probably all things in this room, acting all man, so we've got that as well. Mr Mayor, thank you. Could I firstly thank all members and officers for the excellent work that you've taken in scrutiny during 2021-22. I think there's two jumps out at me immediately, and that was the harassment of women at work, which Anne-Marie, the chair, and everybody accepted as an excellent piece of work. And also Josie, deputy, for their work involved in getting the finance people to put some money together to help people who couldn't afford uniforms. Tragic state of affairs, but it exists. So thank you very much. I understand that Unison have also jumped on board, and they're going to be contributing towards that scheme as well. So it does prove the work that Scrutiny does, attracts some attention, and I plan to fetch the plan forward from the announcement to probably council in 6 months. Let's see how it's progressed from the excellent work that was done. So we'll have a look at that. And then I'll go into this boarding bit. The annual report, we've got to do it anyway. We're required to do it. So this is what I'm doing today. We've embedded no structure. We've now got chairs. That's now embedded in the system. However, I will make a genuine plea to all political parties and all members that have been allocated seats on those scrutiny panels to actually turn up. We've reduced it down to 9 to try and get people interested. And of course, that lowers your quorum. So if people aren't coming or going early, then you're struggling. So I appeal to everybody. I think we're champion of service users, a critical friend to the council and the partners, of course. But it's a counterbalance of the executive and its decision making. And whilst we seek to add value in what we do, contribute to the development of policy, which we hope will get better and better this year. The report certainly demonstrates the depth of the work that we've collectively covered and highlights where we have added value. So if you've read it, don't mind if you haven't. If you've read it, you'll see that there's a lot of stuff going on. As I've stated in the letter to the Wakefield residents, agenda page 107, I'm passionate about the positive role schools can play in the council. This is the place where we come together, we debate the issues, ask challenging questions, and unfortunately provide a voice for our
outside of this authority, as I represent Wakefield and other joint West Yorkshire committees. And it is, as Graham said, to pay tribute to our officers, Mark Toulson, Andy Wood, and Lynn Gascoigne, and Michael Reynolds. They all provide valued support, experience and advice when it's needed, because as you are all aware, we're in challenging times, and in challenging times we have seen where dates have been put back or changed, or the advice coming out is yet to be given. So we do obviously respect the support that they give us. It's also important to note, as Councillor Isham has said, Graham, that the role of scrutiny is not just a challenge or to be the critical friend, it's to have an overview of what is happening across the authority and how we work with all the partners from other agencies. It's important also to note that in doing this partnership, we have to value the experience of the people that sit in our committee, including, as Councillor Graham has said, our board members. One of them mentioned in the report is Mrs. Harrison Mavis, well known to a lot of people here who has spent 20 years on the scrutiny committee, and as a scrutiny co-opted member provides valuable experience going over the years and as present patient receiver. I do threaten people that, as well as being friendly, if they don't behave themselves, I will take out my folded shillelagh out of my bag to keep in line. So new members, be aware. And the shillelagh, if you don't know, is an Irish fighting stick. So believe me, I can manage it well. I think, as well as the way that we have worked scrutiny in Wakefield, we've not just looked at the challenge part of it, we've looked at inputs, outputs, and not just an output as a target, but it's important that we actually do see the value and the quality of services that comes out of these outputs, not just a tick in the box. I believe when you look at the four scrutinies members that I've mentioned by Councillor Isham in the report, we can all say the value that they put individually. Education, the work that's gone on with the cabinet member in terms of the progress that's been made in education. We look at Darren's committee and we look at the investment that's been brought in with investment and the jobs that that's brought. The climate change is an initiative that we all support and want to see a cleaner, greener environment for everybody across our district. And in the health agenda, I'd like to pay tribute to all the people on my committee, because that is an ever-moving picture, and it is indeed, I believe, the responsibility of all of us together working with partners to provide quality services in the healthcare agenda, and in particular, and we're addressing next meeting, is the care of the elderly when they're most needed. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank all of those involved and support Councillor Isham in his comments on the report put before Council today.
Councillor Keane.
Yeah, just adding on to what Betty's just said there, I served on that committee and have done for a number of years. I think what we've got to look at is also one of the vital things that the overview of scrutiny provides. It's an alarm mechanism. In the respect that when you go on and you watch the television news this week about what's happening in other authorities, particularly in the area that you are in charge of overview and scrutiny with the children and young people, it is a vital alarm system that we can check out what the system is, what the provision of services in Wakefield is about, and if there is any systems that we should be made to improve, we do. So that comes through scrutiny, because you've got the ability to drill down and examine the subject. So more power to the LO. Thank you for serving on Betty's committee. You do a great job.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Any further comments or questions? Okay, all in favour? Any against? Abstentions? Right, that's carried. I'm just going to do a little
Mr. Mayor, members, the children and young people who are here to speak to Agenda Item 9 have now arrived. We're just bringing them from downstairs, so just bear with us a moment while they arrive.
Okay.
We want
harassment, discrimination, homophobia and racial abuse. There should be better, our futures, there should be better support for care leavers and for young people preparing for adulthood. We need to combat climate change and end digital poverty. It's important to me that these things improve, and I want to see that there are more entry-level jobs and that there are more opportunities for young people with additional support needs.
Hi, I'm Ahmad. Health is not just about our physical health, it's about improving mental health, sexual health and our healthy lifestyles too. If this plan works, we should see that young people are encouraged to find jobs in health and see more acceptable waiting times in CAMS and other health supports.
We need inclusive education which meets individual needs, where there is bereavement support, young carer support and ideally no bullying. I hope that children in the future have improved access and support for young carers and a decrease in young people feeling worried about exams and schoolwork.
With these priorities, we can ensure that there is support for the things that matter most to children and that we can all work to make things better.
We, the members of Build Our Futures, would like you to approve the Children and Young People's Plan from 2022 to 2025. Many thanks for the chance to come and share our thoughts with you.
She's run upstairs.
Today, and only just
She's out of there.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Mayor. I'd like to thank these young people for coming in. It must be difficult for them to sit here in this chamber. I mean, it's difficult for some of us sometimes, really, to sit in this chamber and speak. But be assured that we are listening to you. And to come in today and explain what you wanted is absolutely marvellous. And with that, I'd like to move the plan.
Thank you. Councillor Schmidt, is the report seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any questions in relation to the report? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? I think that is carried, and I think well done to you all for doing this. In all honesty, I don't think any of us can be under any illusion about the changes and pressures that young people are under these days, and I think that's why this report is so important and to ensure that it is delivered by the services, because I think our future is in your hands. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Space.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I was waiting for you to ask for a comment because I did want to comment on what I think is a really excellent plan. Congratulate all the children and young people for it. What we have to now do is deliver on it. But the other thing that I wanted to say is, and I hope you will join me in another round of applause, because on Saturday it was Children of Achievement Awards, and Reese, who sat on the left there, got an award because he's been so involved in the Children in Care Council, helping to interview social workers, and he's done lots of things involved in training the foster carers, and he achieved an award, and I think we should all congratulate him for that.
Right, I'll do a quick pirouette on this one and say, are there any other comments? Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I say to all these young people here that it's nerve-wracking when you do something like that. So I remember the first time I ever played the guitar in public, I was shaking that much I couldn't hold the frets down properly. But it doesn't last long, and eventually you don't care. It's really that. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Councillor Farmer.
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. I just wonder if you guys can come up to Austin and see if you can get us a swimming pool.
Every opportunity is You didn't hear that, did you? Thank you, Councillor Fine, for that comment. Right, anything else? Okay, so, thank you very much. Okay, so we go on to agenda item 12, which is to deal with any questions made by members. No questions have been received. We will now move to the final agenda item, which is to consider motions proposed by members. 2 motions have been received. The first is from Councillor Gert. I would like to ask him to please move his motion to Council.
Yeah, thank you. As you can see, this motion was originally planned to be moved by Councillor Gordon, who no doubt had some long speech prepared. Unfortunately, he's been unable to attend today last minute, so I've been drafted in, and I don't have a long speech prepared, which I'd be grateful for. All I'm going to say is you'll have read through this yourselves anyway. We all know how much of a struggle it is at the moment. So I move this motion basically because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gert. Is the motion seconded?
Yeah, I second it.
Right, Councillor Hayes. Do you wish to formally speak now, or reserve the right to speak later in the debate?
Yeah, speak later is fine. Thank you.
Okay. Right, Councillor Ellie Jones has submitted an amendment to the motion. The amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Jones, would you please introduce your amendment?
Mr Mayor and colleagues of the Council, we welcome the original resolution by the Liberal Democrats calling for a cost of living emergency. What you have before you today is the original motion with the addition of the Labour Group amendments that you received at the beginning of the week. In the absence of Councillor Gordon, who has been unavoidably detained, I would like to acknowledge his involvement in bringing this important issue to Council. The Labour Group took the decision to bring forward our amendment to enhance the original by providing more statistics and evidence around how the cost of living crisis is affecting local residents, along with up-to-date forecasts around further rises in food prices, fuel and energy bills over the coming months. We also felt that the original motion was a missed opportunity to once again highlight all the important work taking place across the district, along with the current support available from the Council to help our residents who are struggling. As well as endorsing the Liberal Democrat Party's strategy for tackling the cost of living crisis, the amendment also highlights what the Labour Party would do in addition to the measures recently introduced by the Government in the short term, along with plans for fixing the cost of living crisis into the future. Finally, in supporting the declaration of the cost of living emergency, it reaffirms the Council's commitment to putting the cost of living crisis front and centre of the Council's business, working alongside partners to protect the financial well-being of local residents. Residents from every part of Wakefield district are feeling the hit from higher taxes and rising energy, food and fuel prices. Food price rises in the UK could hit 15% this summer, the highest level in more than 20 years, with inflation lasting into the middle of next year, and energy bills are likely to increase by £800 once again in October. According to a recent report by the ONS, 70% of adults reported feeling very or somewhat worried about the rising cost of living. A cost of living tracker from June, conducted by More in Common think tank, found 67% of Brits could see the cost of living as their key issue. 5% report using a food bank in the past month, and 18% report opting less to deal with the rising cost of living. 59% of Britons still believe that too little is being done about the cost of living. The Trussell Trust claims that between 4.5 and 5 million children in this country are living in poverty, and yet just over 2.5 million are entitled to free school meals. This is not good enough for the 5th richest country in the world. The area I represent has 2 well-attended food banks run by volunteers committed to ensuring people eat. Food banks should not be needed in our country. Tackling poverty is a political priority at this Labour Council. We are committed to supporting residents through the cost of living crisis and will continue to highlight support available wherever possible. We provide a number of services to our residents, many of which are outlined in the motion before you, including the More Money in Your Pocket roadshows, of which 15 are taking place over the summer months, providing advice and assistance with debt and managing finances. The Residents Recovery Group, made up of key partners from across the district, including the voluntary sector, continues to meet on a regular basis to help shape our district-wide response to this cost of living crisis. Wakefield District Labour Councillors have consistently lobbied the government to do more to support residents who are struggling and have committed to putting additional measures in place and help raise awareness of support services and schemes available from the council and its partners. Over the past year, we have tabled motions on energy bill increases, the cost of living crisis, and campaigned for the government to make the universal uplift permanent. In February 22, elected members of the council also called on the government to support Labour's fully funded plan to ease the energy crisis. And whilst we welcome the government's additional measures to support households, including the recent U-turn on a windfall tax and the compulsory buy now, pay later loan scheme, which will provide much needed relief from energy price increases for households. Because of the government's failure to act, we've seen this turn into an emergency situation. The gap between the rich and the working class is truly evident. Action is needed sooner rather than later, and we need to send a clear message to the government that an emergency intervention is required now. The situation is desperate, and the government has to commit to helping residents by providing a long-term solution to fix this emergency living crisis, not just short-term assistance. I move the resolution before you today.
Is the amendment seconded?
I second the amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hyde. Do you wish to formally speak now or reserve the right to speak at a later date?
Speak now, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of the Council, we stand on the brink of what will be one of the worst cost of living crises in 50 years. 2022 data shows 14.5 million people in the UK population live in poverty. Of these, 8.1 million are working age adults, 4.3 million are children, and 2.1 million pensioners. Child poverty continues to rise, with almost a third of poor children living in a lone parent family. In Wakefield, the situation is worse. The latest Wakefield District State of the District report found that in 2020, over 26,000 households in the Wakefield District were food poor, with their disposable income below the 60% of the UK standard annual income. Of these, 24% are children. 14,150 of our children live in a low-income family compared to the UK average of 19%. The impact of poverty on children can take decades to put right, if at all. Rising food, energy and fuel prices will worsen this crisis. The coming winter will be a time of dire need for many of our most vulnerable citizens, and especially children and pensioners. Many of our citizens are increasingly relying on food banks and food pantries and other forms of food assistance. Before the COVID crisis, there were 6 food banks active in Wakefield District. Now there are 33 food banks and 3 food pantries. Yes, it is evidence of Wakefield Council, local businesses and ordinary people and local volunteers stepping into the breach to help out, but it also is a depressing and deeply damaging verdict of 12 years of Tory rule that so many have been pushed down into dire need and want for the very basics of life. This crisis is not due to the war in Ukraine. It is down to decades of economic and social policy that emphasises the growth of wealth over the welfare and well-being of many of all citizens. And then, of course, we have Tory benches opposite as cheerleaders for austerity. The Harold Strickland fan club celebrates austerity as families and children go without food. Caring the basics of life, the uncaring and selfish politics of greed and inequality that the Tories specialise in is doing untold damage to thousands of families in Wakefield and especially the life chances of thousands of children. There has been no levelling up. The only growth there has been in inequality. Vast wealth has been accumulated by the few and small families, many of whom working families have been pushed into food and fuel poverty. The Resolution Foundation has just this week published a report showing that income inequalities are not moving at all. For example, the average income per person in Hammersmith and Fulham has remained 2 to 3 times higher than in Burnley for more than 2 decades. The gains of the richest people in the highest income places are vastly outstripping those of people in places like Wakefield. In Wakefield, I think that the situation will be even worse, but for the change of policy direction that my fellow councillor the leader of the council, Denise Jeffrey, took us as a leader in emphasising community development. This has translated into some really effective grassroots initiatives outlined in our motion, such as Help at the Hubs, Money in Our Pocket roadshows, and the excellent work of the Residents Recovery Group, chaired by my fellow councillor, Councillor Maureen Cummings. This winter is likely to be harsh and harder for over 30,000 households in Wakefield district, and I think that would be worthwhile building on Councillor Cummings' achievements by some preparation work in the autumn. I have spoken to my colleague on my left here, Mohammed Ayoub, and he and I am sure others would like to contribute to the brilliant work of Maureen and colleagues. Finally, our commitment to our most hard-pressed families remains a key priority. We have done a lot locally, but we need central government to step up the mark and do more on tackling rising food, energy and fuel price rises. Practical help, such as cutting VAT on energy and fuel, insulating the homes of those in food and fuel poverty. Clearly, we now have a voice in Parliament who can raise these issues, and we need to include that in our efforts on tackling food and fuel poverty impacts. I commend this motion to you and look forward to working with you to do all that we can to support our most vulnerable in what is the worst cost of living crisis in 50 years.
Do any member wish to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the government's offering paying 37 billion in support of what is terrible, and we all accept is happening, nobody's denying this. But you know, when people were sitting at home with 80% of their wages for not going to work, there was always going to be a price to be paid. And it's inevitable that there was. I'm not justifying it, I'm just saying it's an economic fact. Now, we heard Councillor Husband there saying that it's not just Ukraine, or nobody thinks it is, but I suppose, you know, when you... Russia is the second biggest producer of fertiliser in the world, all right? Because Russia can't export its fertiliser, the cost of fertiliser goes up, therefore the feed you put into animals goes up, and so it knocks on. If you think the government can control it, they can't. And I know what you all think, we just think let's print money. You know, we've done enough of that printing money, which is how we managed to pay for all these people to sit at home. But there was always going to be a price to be paid. You know, so the government have introduced a levy on profits of fuel companies as from the 22nd of June. There's plenty of other measures that have been taken, delivering 1,000 effective tax cuts for 2,000 families, delivering 6 billion tax cuts for 30 million working people across the UK from July. It's the biggest increase in the biggest increase in the minimum wage, up to £9 somewhere now, £9.50 an hour. You know, somebody's got to pay for it. It's not just magic. You know, and I accept that the governments don't like to tell you the outcome. You know, they don't like to tell you always what the consequences are going to be. But there was always going to be a consequence when people are sat at home and not going to work. Nobody caused COVID, the government didn't cause COVID, and I accept that it did what it had to do. But the idea that it's all the government's fault is just naivety at a level that I just can't accept. I just can't believe you actually think it. Do you think the government's sitting there going, I know, let's jack the prices up for all them poor people? Well, no, of course they don't. Governments love to give money away, it gets you elected. But there's reality. Tell me what you're doing is, let's have or cut this so we can't have any income, but at the same time spend more. That's all this says. So what the latest offering from Uncle Tom's Cabin, you've just politicised it and made it impossible really to support it, because it's just, I'm afraid, you know, you can't actively support it because it really is simply just an attack, as we heard from Councillor Husband. It's just an attack. It doesn't actually mean anything. It's just words. And if you were in government, would probably be even worse if you wanted to lock people down for longer. But nobody seems to recall that, do you?
Councillor Pickett. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've not planned to speak. I just wanted to make a couple of comments in support of the amendment. Undoubtedly, many people across this district are going to be facing a really difficult winter. We know the sort of levels of worry that many people in our communities have got about how they'll pay the bills, how they'll feed their families. We also sat for months with the government refusing to take any action. Now, the steps that they took later in terms of support are very welcome to people, but for many, many months, people across our communities were desperately worried about how they would pay the bills. And as we move forward to the autumn price cap, I think we're going to see people having the same worries again. So I think there's a real issue about the lack of trust with the government, acting from crisis to crisis, rather than people feeling it has got some sort of plan for this country. And that's what's lacking. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. But the second was to say that the cost of living crisis that people are facing at the moment is made up of some short-term and some long-term factors too. The short-term we've talked about, but I think it's very important to recognise that when the government came in 2010, it made choices. It made choices about austerity, it made choices about benefit cuts, it made choices about public sector pay restraints that caused massive problems for people in terms of a reduction of their income. And I have to say, in respect to the original movers, and why we're back on the amendment, they were hand in glove with the present government when that happened. We mustn't forget that the Liberal Party was in government from 2010 to 2015 and laid the foundations of austerity that is causing some of the problems we're facing today.
No worries. I think we should thank our Liberal Democrat friends for bringing this onto the agenda today and allowing us to debate this, but I will be supporting the amendment. Basically, as was said during that amendment, we discussed this at Council in February about rises in fuel costs. And I remember seconding the motion and speaking about how 49 years ago the price of petrol went up 3 pence, not a litre, a gallon. And it went up from 33 pence to 36 pence. That, coupled with decimalisation, put us in an inflationary spiral that lasted a decade. That was 36 pence. It is now, diesel is now £9 a gallon at the pumps outside. So, it's a good job I think these young kids left when they did. Because if they did just talk about where things have gone in 50 years and where it's likely to end up in their lifetime, they'd have run out screaming. We've got to do something as a government. We called for the levy on the profits of things back in February. You've just said that they haven't imposed it until June. Making sure that the pals who work in that can make their profits. Now, at the end of the day, what we've got to do, we could have a look across the channel and see France. They put a limited 4% rise on theirs. Why didn't we do the same? What's the difference? It's the difference is they have a government across there that want to do things for the people who are like them. These don't. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. In support of the amendment and to add my concerns to the comments that have already been made on this side of the House, I have to say, I've sat here a lot of years and I've heard a lot of arguments or reasons from the opposition benches as to why things happen. But today it leaves me aghast. Aghast. Imagine it's somebody else has always got to pay. I wonder how the people who are visiting food banks would react to the information that was given out about the Tory dinners that were going on. When we had donors paying thousands and thousands of pounds when we have people out there who don't know if they're going to have a dinner or put the heat on. I listen to you and I appreciate you do the same. Courtesy. I do not understand for one moment how we can listen here to people. Councillor Home would say, they're sat at home. Somebody's got to pay for them, they're sat at home. What about the people who are going out to work and are having to go to food banks to feed their families? Are they sat at home? No, they're worried about what's going to go on the table or how they're going to pay the bills. And when we go on about somebody has to pay, let's just go back a little while. Who paid for the irresponsible actions of this government, letting out contracts for PPE equipment to their cronies, to equipment that was being delivered that couldn't be used because it was not medically fit to be used? Billions and billions of pounds of waste. Who paid for that? Why has it come to a position where pressures have to be put on to make them enforced to try and get some of that money back from the big people who put it in their banks and their pockets? Who paid for that? We did. We did. So don't you sit there and say to people, it has to be paid for. Go to the top and lead from the top in terms of compassion, financial management, the economy of this country, some respect for the people, and at the same time, don't let's forget, Partygate was going on while people were dying, while people were in agony, and yet we have this here today as a reason why we should all perhaps look at why we all have to pay. Look to yourselves, look to policies, look to people, and have to have some passion for what's going on for those that are suffering and more to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really interesting, is this, because every time we talk about this sort of thing, straight away it's austerity. In 2010, all of a sudden, the Labour Party got the blame for a banking crisis across the world. And by the way, I don't know whether you understand that sort of thing or not. It started in America. So, well, can I say that I've just sat here? Can I say, Mr. Mayor, I've sat here, and I've always brought up courtesy to listen to people. So just give us a bit of courtesy. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. We had a banking crisis, that was a worldwide banking crisis, but guess what? It was the Labour Party's fault. They couldn't manage the economy. So we get a Conservative government in, and they come in 12 years ago, right? And they said the only way is austerity. And what we've all got to do, we've all got to suffer. We've got more billionaires and millionaires in this country over the past 10 years than we've ever had. So we haven't all suffered. Believe you me, we haven't all suffered. You know, and it's always the same. You talk about who has to pay for it. Well, I'll tell you what, the billionaires and billionaires aren't, because they take their money out of the country and they don't pay the taxes. So it's an interesting dilemma. But I also want to say is austerity was not about saving money. It was a policy to cut the public sector. That's what it was. And to be fair, David Cameron's now starting to say that, and George Osborne. It's a straightforward policy. And guess what? You still see them come on now saying there's too much being paid into the public sector. So it's not about saving, it's not about austerity, it's about a policy. And you should come out and have the honesty to say to that policy. So I'm just befuddled by it all. I like my colleagues here, Catherine sat here, we've got a food bank in Airedale, we've got a baby bank in Airedale, we've got a number of things in Airedale that we haven't had for years. And now we're looking, and we don't even know whether we can keep on going, because it's getting that bad. And it's that side of it that's the issue. There's enough money in this country to actually change the policies and to
actually look at levelling up properly, not this government's levelling up, but in areas, not just like Wakefield, like a lot of this country, and the money's there. It was there. It's there for the bankers, by the way, because what are we doing? We want a cap on the banking bonuses, and they're taking that off to make sure they get a pay rise. One final thing, because I think this is important. I remember probably too many years ago going in for a rise when inflation was 14.7%. That's where inflation was when we went in for a rise. And believe it or not, on the company we got, they give us 14%. And you know what? You're right, it wasn't worth 14%. Because it doesn't matter. Because that's inflation. And you know what's caused inflation here? Right? Some of the stupid things that this government's doing. And it's about time you put your hands up instead of blaming people who can and don't have anything to do with it.
Councillor Spence.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the amendment, but I just want to make a comment on the windfall tax. I suppose it's a bit of a technical comment, really, because the government launched a consultation last week, which was intended to last for 1 week. It ended yesterday to seek technical feedback on the draft legislation. This is to ensure that the legislation operates as the government intends. So, just to confirm and clarify, the situation is that once the legislation has been formally enacted, the levy will apply retrospectively from 26th of May 2022, and it's intended to remain in force until the government considers oil and gas prices have returned to historically more normal levels, with the sunset clause expiring at the end of December 2025. So I think with that, we've not quite yet over the line with the windfall tax.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Politicians around this country stood on their doorsteps clapping our NHS key workers throughout the pandemic. And what we're hearing from the Leader of the Opposition is that those very same people have been expected to pay the price for that. The dinner ladies, the carers, the bin men, the teachers, the warehouse workers and nurses, all struggling to make ends meet, choosing whether to eat their homes or feed their children. The very same people that made sure that our country kept running. I do support this motion, and in doing that I'd just like to commend the actions of this council in supporting our most vulnerable and doing what the government are very clearly unable to.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Ackman.
It's nice to be sat on the sidelines watching both parties argue. I'd just like to remind everyone of how much our residents are actually suffering. On Monday evening I visited a resident for a different matter, and she offered me a cup of tea, which I obliged, and there was no milk. So she said, "I'm really sorry, I've got no milk in." Okay. And she said, "Well, I've turned the fridge off." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Electric prices are too high, so I can't afford to keep the fridge on." So just whilst all parties have these political spats and pops from 10-15 years ago, let's all remind ourselves that we're councillors of Wakefield and our responsibilities lie to our residents before any party, and we should all do what we can to try and change the lives of our residents, because they really are suffering. And those of you that are on the ground and active speaking with the residents, you'll know how much they are actually suffering quietly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ackman. Councillor Ray.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was going to say something similar. I think we all got to really think about just how bad this is for our residents at the minute, and I really don't think we've seen the worst of it. No. I think there's bigger stresses to come on the people of the Wakefield district and the whole country. I think the cost of living is going to get even worse, and I think we're going to need that massive support. And I think we've got to remember that this isn't just people sat at home doing nothing. These are cleaners, teachers, bus drivers. These are small businesses. I saw just today that businesses have had to close because of the extra cost of electricity. You know, we've got some absolutely brilliant businesses right across the district, and we want to see them stay. They've survived a pandemic, and now they're going to crumble because they're not getting enough support. I really urge leader to get behind this amendment. We had to put in all of the brilliant work that the leader and Maureen, Councillor Cummins are doing to support people across the district, if only to show people what's there for them. We really need to keep getting that message out. But there's nobody that can sit here and honestly say the government can't do any more. Councillor Rhodes correctly pointed out, they're able to print money when it suits them and when it suits their priorities. People are absolutely on their knees and they need support now, not in 6 months when they've copied more of Labour's ideas.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really concerned about people that are living in our communities across the district. I volunteer in a food bank every day and a baby and children's bank most days. And we get calls, we're getting more and more calls, especially from older people who are on a fixed income and can't afford to eat as well as heat. And it's destroying them. They are embarrassed at having to ask for food. Some of them have gone through a war, they fought for the country, and now they're having to come to us, to a food bank, and ask for some food. And others are having to come and they can't afford to clothe their children. We've also got a uniform bank in Airedale. They can't afford a school uniform. Where on earth are we going? Within 2022, and we're having to put up with this from this Tory government. It's absolutely disgusting what you're putting them all through. People have worked, that people working and asking for food. They can't afford presents for the children's birthday. I got a call yesterday. I'm really sorry, but I've no money to be able to buy my little girl any presents for a birthday. Have you got a book or two that you can give me to be able to give her for a birthday? That's absolutely disgusting. So we're having to supply food, clothing, uniforms and presents. Not just Christmas presents, but birthday presents as well. And this is in 2022 with a Tory government. It's disgusting what you're putting us all through.
Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with Councillor Asper to say that we need to concentrate on the people in Wakefield. We need to concentrate our time and effort to actually devise some local policy to help those people in need. So all this blowing hot air in this council chamber, debating on the national level different policies, one thing I really want to know is, are we really united or we're waiting for that Superman with a red robe or cape, whatever you call it, coming down last week on Friday? Nobody in this council chamber, opposite councillors, did not offer your congratulations or even mention that Labour MP just been voted in or just stealed whoever we really want to be our MP. So you guys know that you are divided. Labour is not great. The turnout is 79%. So let's get on with the real job. And if you don't even have the nerve to actually congratulate your own MP in this chamber, let's say that it is not the right person. So this new Labour MP will not help us either. Let's do something together, help ourselves. Thank you.
Can I remind members that when you are talking, when you are making comments about the amendment, please? Thank you. Councillor Gears.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk a great deal today. Sorry. I'm very disappointed. Let me tell you something about my life. I've been homeless. I was homeless under a Labour government. I lost my first house. That was under a Conservative government. I don't really care who's to blame. When Tom asked me to stand as a councillor, my first thing to him was, I am not a politician. I'm not interested in being a politician. But I agreed to stand in order to try and help people and get things done. Pointing fingers as to why we're at in helping Isn't helping anybody. We are where we are. We need to find a way of dealing with it. Every Tuesday and Friday, I volunteer at our local food bank. And I go out and I deliver food to people who need it. And it's heartbreaking to go to families where both parents are working and I'm having to take them food because they can't afford to feed themselves. So can we just stop arguing about who's to blame and look for a solution that will help the people of Wakefield? That's what I agreed to stand as a councillor for. To help the people of Wakefield. So can we just get on with doing that and stop arguing and pointing fingers as to who's to blame? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, does that mean that the number of the resolution is now concluded the debate?
We're still speaking on the amendments. Just being raised by Councillor Jones.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Winslow.
It's not working, Mr. Mayor, so I'll try and project myself best way I can. Firstly, I'll just deal with your comments. It's not about a blame-worthy culture, and I understand where you're coming from. But the people in power at the moment is the Conservatives, who are responsible, in my opinion, for the situation we are in now, and have been for the last 12 years. All right? I've listened to all my colleagues around this chamber, and they've pretty much covered all the different things that I've got in my mind. But what I can't believe is the arrogance of Councillor Onwood. All right? The one thing that I want to point out, just to briefly summarise it, is based on what everybody else has said. The Tory government are now about to destroy £1 billion worth of PPE. How many kids could that feed in the Wakefield district in this country? And that's only one example. And that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Councillor Morley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Harvey, you've got about offering solutions. I think as a council, we're offering all the solutions we can physically do. Council coming regularly puts in a report, Mr. Mayor. We're constantly doing that. We're talking about national funding, it needs to come down. We've said enough things, we've said enough about Council Onwood's comments on that. These choices, and these choices the government can make to fund these. But to Councillor Harvey, there's only one party that's completely divided here, and that's using the 2 rows back from the front bench.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Right, Councillor Jones, as mover of the amendment, do you wish to reply?
Yes.
Right, in exercising your right to reply, I remind you that you know that no new matters can be introduced.
The reason I put this motion forward is because Councillor Woodsley and I represent one of the most deprived areas in Wakefield. In fact, Fitzwilliam is the most deprived. And I ask you to put your political differences aside and vote for this amendment so that we can help our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We'll now take the amendments to the vote. To clarify, this is to determine whether the amendment from Councillor Jones should become the new substantive motion. Please show all those in favour of the amendment. Please show those against the amendment. Any abstentions? Right, so, on the basis of the vote that's been demonstrated, the amendment has now become a substantive motion. And we must now take the final vote on that substantive motion. However, before we do so, does any member wish to speak on the new substantive motion? Right, Councillor Hayes, you did reserve your right originally. Do you wish to say anything?
No.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Jones has moved the substantive motion. Do you wish to speak? In next time you're right, I may remind you that no new matters will be introduced.
No.
Right, please show all those in favour of the new substantive motion. Please show those against the substantive motion. Any abstentions? That is carried. would you please move your motion to council?
Yeah, thank you. There are approximately 36,000 unpaid carers in our district, many of whom are unknown. More than 10,000 carers across our district provide over 50 hours of unpaid care per week. Carers UK estimate that nationally, carers save the economy £132 billion per year. In our district, that saving is worth around £700 million. The COVID-19 pandemic has been particularly tough for unpaid carers because of services shutting down, leaving carers to cope, often alone. Even before the cost of living crisis, 63% of carers were spending their own money on care or support services or products for the person they care for. This also includes having to spend a larger proportion of their income on energy costs to keep the person they care for warm and manage their condition, having higher food bills due to the nutritional requirements to support the person they're caring for, and having higher transport costs because the person they care for needs to travel or the carer needs to travel to provide that care. Since carers were surveyed last autumn, they are now saying that they are worried about their energy bills, causing significant financial risk. These carers are looking after people who, with specific medication conditions or equipment that needs to run constantly. They're left with no choices about cutting back on energy bills. Over half are cutting back on heating to manage their finances, with some already falling in arrears with their utility bills. Over a third are worried that they have to use a food bank. Almost half thought they would not be able to heat their homes to a safe level. Those who receive carers allowance or the carers element of universal credit are saying that they are currently unable to meet their monthly expenses. A quarter are already using food banks to manage, falling into arrears, stressed and anxious about finances. Over half are worried about increasing energy bills that could mean they have to use a food bank. Carers are very worried about what the future holds for them and the people they care for. The Council will continue to work alongside partners to help make caring visible, valued and supported. We provide funding to support carers Wakefield and District. The Council's Working Carers Passport for employees encouraging carers and managers to talk about caring and support to help manage caring alongside employment. And that's why I'm asking you all here today to support the campaign by Carers UK and other charities by calling on the government to publish a recovery and respite plan for unpaid carers, to give more financial help and support to protect carers with the cost of living crisis. Right to the district MPs, continue to promote working alongside partners, and I encourage elected members across this chamber to play their part in helping make caring visible, valued and supported. And with that, I move the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Cummins. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
In seconding the motion, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
Speak now. Mr Mayor, colleagues of the Council, locally, Carers Wakefield and District is a support, advice and signposting service to around 9,000 registered unpaid carers. This is a tiny percentage of the estimated carers in our district. These carers are distributed across our district, but those providing 50 hours plus of unpaid care are more prevalent within the most deprived area of this district. And our carers report that 3/4 of their contacts are not digitally able and in digital poverty. Many new carers are women already in poverty, usually younger and juggling caring alongside paid employment. With as many as 100,000 people in the UK undertaking unpaid caring, they have had to use food banks to survive. In the UK, 4.5 million people were forced to take on a caring responsibility as a result of COVID. In our district, this could potentially equate to 23,000 new unpaid carers. This does not include the current estimation of the 36,000 carers in our district as per the latest census figures of 2011, making an estimated total of around 60,000 in our district. During the pandemic, Carers Wakefield and District found a new and innovative way of supporting unpaid carers. One of these ways were providing iPads and digital training to ensure that our carers weren't left isolated and unsupported when their caring hours increased due to the inability to access respite care and support and keep in touch with friends and family. Unpaid carers do not often separate the role from their usual relationship that they have with the person they care for. This has implications for support and prevention services for carers, as they are difficult to target within our population. Evidence suggests that carers are less likely to access services such as healthcare and social support than the general population. This is due to a tendency to prioritise the needs of the person they care of above their own. The implication of this is that the health and well-being needs of the carers are often not met as they emerge, and often carers will only seek support when this has worsened to the point where they cannot provide their usual care to the person they care for, and seek professional help for the person they look after rather than themselves. Carers of all ages have an increased likelihood of poor mental health. For example, young carers are 50% more likely than their peers to report poor emotional health. This is similar across the adult caring population, and the likelihood of mental health problems increases with the amount of care that they provide. Carers are also at higher risk of physical health problems, often delaying seeking health care, and that includes tests and procedures, until a health problem requires emergency attention. Carers that provide higher levels of care are more than twice as likely to suffer poor health compared to people without caring responsibilities. These carers are at 23% higher risk of stroke. Carers allowance in the UK is currently £69.70 a week. The average caregiver works over 50 hours per week, which using that equates to less than £1.30 an hour per hour of caregiving, highlighting why so many unpaid carers are in poverty. I'm encouraged by this resolution to support and work with local partners and the call for a recovery and respite plan for unpaid carers, making carers visible, valuable and supported. So I second this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? May I remind members that speeches must be directed to the question of the discussion or to a first explanation or point of order. Councillor Keith.
I guess this motion touches and links in with the last previous motion because it's the impact of the cost of living coming onto this. But one of his figures of 132 billion, I think he said, was how many actual carers does that provide? And realistically, would they be employed to be those carers? Because the work that they do is often arduous, backbreaking, and long-term without any respite. So those without these voluntary carers, those jobs wouldn't get done. I do like the detailed help that you said to speak on what my friend behind me here was saying about what we can do in the Wakefield Met. Love the idea that it's provided with IT help and allowing them to go on. So these are practical things that we are doing in Wakefield. But I come back to the point, would these jobs get done? Would those people who need that care get that care without these volunteers? And that's why I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Keith. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. I'd like to speak in support of this motion too. And just to remind ourselves that lots of older carers, partners of carers, work in isolation at home and see their caring as duty. And they don't even realise that they're entitled to a careless assessment even from the council. And I think even when they do find out, they often play down the problems and the difficulties associated with their caring role. Because they feel guilty in asking for help. Research shows us that it's often the case that carers actually pass away before the people that they're caring for because of the arduousness of the tasks that they do. So it's important for us all, as people and as council, to communicate
care is relentless. For many it's labourable, but it is just that, it is labour. From making breakfast to getting dressed, cleaning and hygiene, doing all of work to support the loved ones that you love. And it can be incredibly frustrating because you might be tired and you might want to go out with friends and you might just want a break. But the job you're doing isn't optional. Someone else is not there to pick up the slack if you don't do it. And for that reason, it can be very lonely. As I said, I'd be lucky enough to have a family and a wonderful husband who did support and care for my granddad, but some days I would be home with him on my own. And we'd have the same conversation over and over, time and again. He'd ask where my grandma was, who died years earlier, many times every day. And I honestly don't know what I would have done if I was dealing with that every day on my own without any respite. But it's what people across our district do every day for the ones that they love. And our loved ones deserve that. It shouldn't be so hard to do the right thing. The state should support those who care, not least because this motion says unpaid carers contribute billions to the UK economy. We should care for carers as they care for others and offer them every support.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Tully.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think this resolution to an extent overlaps with the one that we're talking about today, because it's about shafting people who care for our elderly and care for the relatives. Because when you look at the regulations in and around carers allowance and carers, it's pretty stringent. If you're over pensionable age and you're looking after your partner that's over pensionable age, you can't get carers allowance because you're receiving a state pension. You don't get it. And if you're lucky enough in 2022 to get a carer's allowance, provided the person you're caring for is on at least the middle rate of care or the equivalent in PIP, you get a measly sum of £69 something a week. But you must be caring for these people for at least 35 hours a week. Now, I didn't to Eton or Harrow or grammar school, but I know that equates to about £1 an hour. All it equates to. And people are caring for people over and above. The old system, and I'm not directly blaming this government, I'll blame all previous governments, because carers allowance has been around a long time, but the old system needs overhauling, because it's the old adage, course to look after them because they're committed to them. It's the way we treat nurses, they'll never go on strike because they're committed to the patients, so we'll keep shafting them and all, and we'll shaft it. And that's what we do. That's what we do, and we don't care. And while ever carers keep doing what they're doing for a measly £1 an hour in 2022, you know, we may have to start going back to putting kids up chimneys, to be quite honest with you, because that's where we are here. And it is imperative that we support this resolution, because it is time now that we looked at looking after our elderly and infirm people. We have got a situation now with the latest census that people, whether they like or not, are living longer. But just because people are living longer, they're not living longer and sailing 3 parts of the year around the Caribbean. All these people are living longer, but they're still living longer in sometimes pretty poor health. And they need assistance. And it's the other situation where people are trying to, I can talk about somebody that holds down, he works on nights. He goes on nights so he can look after his mum during the day. But he can only work 18.5 hours on nights. He wants to work 37 hours on nights and bring in a full-time wage, but he can't. Because if he works over 18.5 hours, he loses his carer's allowance. It's taken off him. And all these areas need major overhaul. And I would suggest that when you look at the carer situation, you look at the way that carers are treated, we need a simpler system. If we're going to ask family, friends, to look after people, to look after our own within our communities, they need the recompense to do that job and not be paid a pittance. And I would support the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thank you to Councillor Melanie Jones, because I know you're a professional carer and you speak out of your dignity and heartfelt experience as well. But however, I want to remind the council, I know that Councillor Gordon is not here, so what's happening at the moment in Beulah Court? How many outlets suffering mental health problems are going to trapped out of their houses, their homes, in the name of social housing by WDH? And what will this council do? This council cannot give something with one hand, a little, and take away straight away with the other. So that is my question. How are we going to deal with people in Beulah Court at the moment? Notably, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose you don't think I'm going to say something not very nice, but I'm not. I think successive governments have exploited people as carers. Because, as Steve said, well, you know, I'm not going to stop looking after them, are they? How many people become carers almost by accident, that fall into it? Me and my brother looked after my mother who had Alzheimer's disease. It must have been a fate worse than death, frankly, because I wouldn't want to be looked after by me. But, you know, it truly is something. I mean, I only did it for short times. We had the money to be able to bring people in to help and one thing or another. But that small time, how draining it was, you know, you just can't believe, really. I mean, you know, whatever I said for it, you know. But I think governments really need to take a grip of this. If people are living longer, then they need to cope with that, because they'll tax you for longer, don't they? So, you know, I absolutely support the motion, and I can't say enough about the people who do act as carers, and I know some, I know a couple of ladies who do it now, and others that have done it in the past, and I absolutely take my hat off to them, because it's such a difficult thing to do. I support it.
Councillor Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion, and I particularly want to mention the free app for young carers, because they're not forgotten, but I think young carers, they're one of these groups of people that don't even realise the carers. So it is important that they get the support and they get identified in a way that they can be given that support. They have different ways that they need to be supported. The way that the schools, it's not about money with them, it's how they cope with going to school, how they get their homework done. And I'm really pleased that that is included in this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Cummings, as moved the motion, you have the right of reply. In exercise your right to reply, may I remind you that no, you must can be introduced.
I've only been here for 19 years and I don't know which one to do. Yeah, I'd like to take some of the comments as they came. And Charlie, you're absolutely right. I mean, unpaid carers save us, I'm not going to blame the government, save us in the region of £20,000 per annum for the care that they're given. The £69 care, when it's claimed, isn't enough, because very often, as Michelle has said, and you have said, and I appreciate that, Councillor Homewood, caring is 24/7, it's 24/7. And very often, as Jackie said, carers feel guilty, you know, that they're asking for help. And they shouldn't feel guilty, because people that they're caring for need, I'm not saying they're not getting good help, but sometimes need professional help. And of course, the carers themselves need respite care. They need to look after them, to be able to look after them themselves. I'm really pleased that, you know, we do recognise young carers, and they don't realise very often that's it's like anything else. They're brought up in that situation where it is that mum, dad, usually mum is not well, and they're working their young lives around supporting an adult. So, Beulah Court, I don't know the answer to that, and I'm sorry, but maybe you and I can have a conversation about that. We can take that on board. But I'm really pleased that everyone in this chamber today has recognised the fact that we do need to help and support all carers, whether they get the attendance allowance or not. And we should encourage people to at least apply for that allowance, because it could provide us crucial respite care. So I'm really pleased. I hope I've answered everybody's questions there. And once again, I'm happy to move the motion.
Right, thank you, Councillor Cummings. And certainly safe to say, I think the vast majority of citizens in this chamber would have experience in one form or another of this situation. So I think I welcome all the comments that have been made today. Right, please show all